Nice to see everyone. I like this room for the meeting.
It's like a library.
So it is 9:05 a.m. on Wednesday, November 15th. And I call to order this meeting of the Maine Gambling Control Board. My name is Steve Silver. I am the board chair. Because we are meeting in a new location and in a hybrid format, I'll just explain some ground rules for how we'll be holding the meeting. So this is a hybrid meeting. The physical location is at Oxford Casino, 777 Casino Way in Oxford, Maine. There's obviously also some people observing on Zoom. We do provide that virtual attendance option. The board expects that members of the public who attend in person and virtually will all be able to provide public comment if needed. If you're on Zoom, mute yourself. Looks like everybody is muted until it's your time to talk. In the room, because of the audio and everything, if you're going to speak, I'll ask you to go to the podium because we have a microphone there. I know normally we're in Augusta, you just got to stand up and talk, but head over there. And the unit on behalf of the board posted notices of this meeting on its website with instructions on how members of the public could access the meeting. In addition, the unit on behalf of the board sends agendas in advance of the meeting, all those who requested. So board sincere hope that all those interested in the subject matter of today's meeting have received notice of the meeting, how to participate. At this time, I'll introduce the other board members, confirm that we have a quorum. So when I call your name, introduce yourself and where you're from in Maine. Start with you, Ms. Green.
Morning, Sari Green, South Portland.
Steve March.
Morning, I'm Noel March from Hamden, Maine.
I'm Steve Silver, also from South Portland. And Joe Hanslip said he's not going to be here. So we do have a quorum with 3 present. And obviously Executive Director Milton Champion is here. And you'll be hearing from some others in his staff. And on each side of me are the Assistant Attorney Generals, Philip Mantis to my right, and Jennifer Willis to my left. So with that, I think we'll move to approval of the minutes from the September meeting. Any edits, comments? Okay. Move to pass.
Second March.
Okay, let's take a vote. Ms. Green.
Aye.
Chief March.
Aye.
Aye as well. So those are approved. So with that, first up will be Inspector Supervisor Vicki Gardner. For operations report.
Good morning. The operations report for September 2023. There were 12 shipments of machines and or associated equipment shipped to or from licensed facilities. The on-site inspectors completed 735 observations and 32 checklists. There were 12 sub-exclusions. There was 2 minor violations that will continue to be monitored on our activity log, 0 patrons complaints, and 2 formal complaints of potential violations placed on the dashboard. In addition to those, we have calls for service from Oxford PD was 21, 9 in the parking lot, 13 in the casino. They range from counterfeit money, requests for assistance, unwanted subjects, and intoxication. Hollywood Casino, there was 23 calls for service by Bangor PD, 9 in the parking garage, 6 in the hotel or lobby, and 7 in the casino. And they range from wanted out, intoxications, suspicious activity, suicide threat, medical, mental health problems, informational, property found, fraud, assault, trespass, vagrancy, and a 911 hang-up. In the month of October 2023, there were 18 shipments of machines and or associated equipment shipped to or from the licensed facility. On-site inspectors completed 642 observations, 31 checklists, and there were 7 self-exclusions. There were 2 minor violations that will be continued, that will be monitored on our activity log. There were no patrons complaints. There was one formal complaint of potential violations placed on the dashboard. Oxford had 34 calls for service here at the casino. There were 12 in the parking lot, 2 in the hotel, and 20 in the casino. Traffic offenses, 911 hangouts, welfare checks, assistance to rescue, the citizen request assistance, trespass, disorderly subjects, a general walkthrough. And at Hollywood Casino, Bangor PD responded to 20 calls for service, 8 in the parking garage or outside, 2 in the hotel or lobby, and 10 inside the casino. They range from wanted out, trespass, drugs, mental health, suicide, threat of suicide, intoxication, PD crashes, traffic hazards, fraud, information, and a welfare check. That completes my operations report. Is there any questions?
Any questions?
Screen?
Vicky, I'm sorry, I should know this, but when you talk about the formal complaints, who are those made by? Are those made by patrons or by the casino or by the inspectors?
Well, we conduct the investigation, but most of those formal complaints we get through either our observations on property or from the casino itself.
Okay.
They report privacy violations directly to us.
Great, thank you very much.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Vicky.
Thanks, Vicky.
Thank you.
All right, with that, we'll move to the financial report from Auditor Alex Dutob.
September, casinos reported 8% increase in revenue collected versus September 2022. For the month of October, casinos reported 5.95% decrease in revenue collected versus October 2022. Year to date, we have identified an increase of 2.15% versus last year at the same time. Total revenue collected year to date is $59,385,490. Oxford reported an 8.11% win for the month of September and 7.93% for the month of October from slots and best of table games. Oxford reported 17.17% win in September and 27.73%. Average win per machine was $292.21 in September and $224.43. Elwood reported an 8.45% win for the month of September and 9% for the month of October from slots and 16.28% win for the table games in September and 17.14% in October. Average gross win per machine was $225.32 in September and $216.09 in October. In advanced deposit wagering, we have identified a decrease of 23.3% for the month of September compared to September 2022. For the month of October, advanced deposit wagering activity decreased by 11.14% compared to October 2022. And year to date, revenue collected from out of state and in-state races was $199,780, which was a decrease of 11% versus last year at the same time.
Thanks, Alex. I don't know if you know this or maybe Austin or Matt or somebody, but the shutdown because of the Lewiston shooting, is that part of the drop in October?
Yes.
Yeah, that's like 3 days, right? So, because otherwise numbers look great. I mean, kudos to both facilities. When you look at, June, July, August, September, everyone's increasing. So, understood. Any other questions for Alex?
Thank you for that point.
Yeah, would it be possible, I don't know if it's you or Milt, but in the future, we don't need a full breakdown, but just to have the sports betting numbers. Just total and what the tax revenue is. Be interesting to see. I know they're up on the website, but we could just add that. All right. With that, we'll move to Director Champion, his report.
Yes, good morning, everyone. First and foremost, I want to thank Oxford Casino for hosting our meeting today and providing a tour afterwards. I brought my entire staff because it's a real big difference when you can actually go and view something versus reading about it or having somebody talk to you about it. So I really appreciate that. I have 4 agency bills in for the legislative session starting in January. The one that pertains to the Gambling Control Board is the universal self-exclusion. And basically it's a bill to bring together one list, one self-exclusion for casinos, sports wagering, fantasy. And so it's be a lot easier to the operator, the process, which we do for the state list with casinos. So we'll see how that works out. Aside from that, glad to say that after a year and a half, sports wagering did go live. And we are accumulating that revenue and it is available on our website. We are tracking it on a day-to-day basis now for the months of November and December. And then starting in January, we will only be doing it monthly. You'll see by the 10th of each month, there'll be a post of the form, so a specific form for showing of the revenue will be for the entire month. So for right now, obviously, we're getting a lot of media inquiries with, the first couple of days. It was kind of nice that we're able to go live during what we would consider a soft opening in the casino industry, rather than trying to open this up the day before the Super Bowl. So there's not been a lot of glitches. We haven't had a lot of complaints. Typically, we've heard from other states that there was an overabundance of paper complaints in regards to the operation of the apps and that sort of thing. So knock wood, we're holding firm so far, and we haven't had as many complaints as others. And I would kind of think that in those other states where they did have a lot of complaints, they had upwards of 10 to 12 apps where we only have 2. So maybe that's the difference. And that's my report.
Okay, any questions for Director Champion? Yeah, none? All right. Okay, well, we've got no license applications. There's a renewal and unfinished business. So I'll say no new. The first item involves consent agreements, which I don't know, Philip, are you presenting this?
Absolutely. So this consent agreement resolves 2 matters against the licensee indicated in the agreement. Those 2 matters are docketed as GCB 2019-25 and GCB 2021-55. The first matter concerns the licensee offering advanced deposit wagering without a license issued by the state of Maine between the times indicated in the consent agreement. And if you'd like me to go directly to that paragraph, it is noted on paragraph 4, on page 1. The second matter regards licensee's renewal to operate as a casino in the state. The renewal app has been held in advance pending the resolution of the ADW matter. So the board votes to adopt or votes to approve this consent agreement. Then the board will then be allowed to make a decision on the renewal application, which I believe is later on in the agenda.
I don't know what you can share, but reading this, there was a letter sent.
Yep.
And then a 2-month period or they took action. Do we know what happened?
I don't know what happened.
And then there's a very specific number of the fine.
Yep.
Does that represent something?
Yes, that is a percentage of the revenue retained by the licensee for the prohibited conduct.
Yeah. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, we're happy to provide context for this if you allow it.
Sure.
Could be helpful.
Yeah. Want to introduce yourself to everybody?
My name is Lou Fresconia. I'm a Vice President, Senior Legal Counsel and Corporate Compliance Officer for Churchill Downs, which is the parent company of both Oxford Casino and Twin Spires. So I'd like to briefly touch on and humor me for a moment going through sort of the history on this and kind of provide some context and how we reached this today. This, as AAG Mantis pointed out, this seeks to settle two complaints between the MGCB and the Oxford Casino regarding suitability. Churchill Downs, the parent company of Oxford Casino, who is also the parent company of Twin Spires, which accepted pari-mutuel wagers in the state, along with a number of other operators through 2019, date indicated in the consent agreement. Not to sort of start from the beginning, but pari-mutuel wagering in the U.S. is, accepted in accordance with the Interstate Horse Racing Act, which, or the IHA, it's a federal law passed in 1978, which seeks to regulate interstate commerce with respect to wagering on horse racing, and it's the IHA that allows interstate commerce and interstate conduct of horse racing across the United States. Twin Spires holds a license, a multi-state license in Oregon, and the IHA protects the right of Twin Spires to take wagers on horse races in a number of different states across the country. As an additional point, during the time period in question, Twin Spires did not accept wagers from Maine residents on Maine races because under constitutional law, that'd be intrastate conduct and not interstate conduct. So wagers were placed on tracks in other jurisdictions, as you may know. When you place a wager, a pari-mutuel wager, that wager is actually placed with the tote system at that track. So these wagers actually go to that track in another state, which makes it interstate commerce. That's a pretty high level summary of the history of the Interstate Horse Racing Act, but that's sort of the basis for why Churchill and Twin Spires maintains that during this period it was appropriate to continue taking wagers. Through 2018, we had an open dialogue with the MGCB about our acceptance of wagers, and we actually even appeared at a meeting at one point very openly and transparently about how we were operating. We had a conversation with then Public Service Commissioner John Morris, and around the time that this letter was initially sent, and we actually have an affidavit that he had signed to memorialize the conversation he'd had with us in advance of this letter being sent out, that that we had explained our position, that we would continue to operate until such time that a license was available, and that he had conveyed to Twin Spires that was appropriate. As you pointed out, that MGCB letter was discussed at a May 2019 meeting and was then sent to all 20 operators offering wagering to residents of Maine. We received that letter in July 2019, along with this first investigation that's listed. This was the first time we had really learned that the state had changed its position on this matter. We then sought to clarify that position, what had changed. I think at that point, we didn't really receive clear guidance. And honestly, when the state published that there was an ADW license process, I think that happened on maybe October 2nd of 2019. And by October 7th, we had voluntarily ceased wagering. We had not had a follow-up conversation at that point, but clearly the writing was on the wall that there was going to be a license. Therefore, we ceased wagering, as we'd always agreed to do, and applied for that license. We finished second in RFP, and that license was ultimately issued to it's a position that Churchill and Oxford have been a very involved partner in Maine, and we appreciate the collaborative regulatory environment, especially even working on this consent agreement. We're presenting this in the spirit of that cooperation, settle this matter. However, I think it was important to at least put on the record that the state had had a very clear position up until apparently 2018, and we maintained that we had the appropriate licenses. We were transparent with the state and operated in compliance with the Interstate Horse Racing Act, but happy to take any questions about additional information around this consent agreement.
I don't know if you know, and I don't need a full number, but how many states have ADW licensing processes?
believe your like then now. I believe it's upward of 20. And we hold licenses in those states.
And then the states that don't have a separate thing, I mean, so is it the position that you can accept wagers in those states?
Correct. And in certain states have specific laws on books that change that, but there are states that are, we consider governed by the Interstate Horse Racing Act because they have not specifically regulated. It's sort of the inverse of PASPA in the fall, you know. The Supreme Court said basically that the federal court couldn't force a state to regulate. This is sort of the inverse where a state can't, federal law when it comes to wagering. This is just the only federal wagering law other than like the UIGA that prohibits wagering.
Okay. Any questions?
Thank you for that. Very helpful.
All right. So we're only voting to approve the agreement, that's correct, right? Okay. Anyone feel like moving to accept this or any comments? Issues?
Maybe discussion will come up in March. I'll move to accept the consent agreement.
I'll second it. So anyone have any questions, issues? No? Okay. I mean, it appears this has been a long negotiation process
Right.
between you all and the state. So I'm not going to disrupt the agreement that was reached. So let's take a roll call vote. This is to adopt the consent agreement for two cases, so 2019-25 and 2021-55. Start with you, Ms. Green.
Aye. For both.
Chief March.
Aye.
I'm an aye as well, so get that signed and put behind everybody. Yes. So with that, the next item is casino operator license renewal for Oxford. And so Director Champion, I have a question because the agenda was amended late. So I want to understand when the public could have or did find out about the new agenda. It's not on the website. So my concern is, right, we met a week ago. I got one agenda. Last night on the board's Dropbox was a different agenda. And this morning, right, we learned this is updated. I went on the website. It's not posted. So there's a distribution list, I assume.
Yes.
When was that sent out? Okay, so this is not a commentary on the merits of the license renewal.
Public notice.
It's more that I don't feel like that's enough for the public, particularly with a casino license renewal. If somebody wants to come and comment from the community to know about it. But the other board members may feel differently. I just think considering we move to every other month, it shouldn't be difficult to have notice at least, 5 days in advance, but less than 2 days just doesn't sit well with me. But others may feel differently. It's not like we're renewing the license for, some obscure vendor.
So Steve, I agree with you. But what is the ramification of tabling the renewal?
There is none, really. They're currently operating on a renewal license submitted. They can continue, according to Maine statute, they can continue to operate until the board makes a decision. So if you want to table this, we can do so, and they'll continue to operate. with their current.
And if there's anyone who's attending today from the public who wanted to speak on that, can they still speak on it even if we table the matter?
I don't see why not.
Later. I'll speak on it today.
Speak out today, if they're here to speak out today, even though we're tabling the renewal,
Yeah, I would say wait till public comment.
It's on the record.
that we can take public comment. Yeah, okay.
Someone may want to rebut or.
So again, not a commentary on the merits of the renewal, but I harp on my own town for not posting things in advance. And so I just think for everything, quite frankly, but particularly for renewal, that we've got to give the public some notice. And I know certain things can be emergencies, but I can't find out about it, a few hours beforehand. So with that, I would move to table this until our next meeting, but.
I would move to table it with public comment being accepted today
Sure, yeah.
as an amendment to that.
I'll second Sari's amended motion.
All right, unanimous, we're all in agreement.
We're in agreement.
Okay. So we'll table that. All right, so with that, we have some updated resolutions.
So we should take public.
Was gonna do it during the public comment period.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's.
So, so resolutions 1 to 11. So Milt, I don't know if you want to take this, I believe this updates the year, period, the 3-year period and, the appeal language for some of them. Or maybe that was already in there, but,
Did we want to add the appeal to everyone or just, it was like 1 through 3? And then the only thing that we really did was we changed and we added the effective date, the expiration date, and of course, the resolve at the end. Where the chair would sign off.
Yep.
There would be a vote for each one. But generically, there's an appeal process for almost everything that we do.
yeah, it was I just remember it was, missing from certain ones, not necessarily on purpose, but
Right.
essentially that when we've delegated to you, if you make a decision, the licensee or whoever it is can appeal and come to the board. So it's that. Any questions for Director Champion? Okay. Can we accept all of them at once?
That's fine.
Yeah.
I would just note how many resolutions
Yeah,
are.
all right. So it's resolutions 1 to 11.
And they all, I believe they all do the same thing, which is they're amended to reflect an expiration date.
Yeah.
And I believe it's all the same expiration date. So I think if you note that on the record, that would be helpful as well.
Yeah, so they all have the effective date of today, all with the expiration date of November 17th, 2026, unless rescinded earlier by a board vote. Which we can do, so to the extent we ever want to, we can.
So move to accept resolutions 1 through 11 with the amended expiration date.
Second, March.
All right, any discussion? Let's take a vote. Ms. Green,
Aye.
Chief March,
Aye.
and I as well, so those are approved. With that, we also have an item about casino surveillance. I don't know if we have an update on that or not.
So there was a question under chapter 17 presented to the board at the last meeting with the request for approval of the rulemaking. There was some conversation. Board member Green wanted to meet with the surveillance companies, and that was accomplished. The unfortunate thing was we were only able to meet with one of the casino surveillance companies and not both. Board member Green was able to ask a lot of questions, I guess. And the conclusion was that she wanted to meet with the IT people from each casino. And we weren't able to complete that request yet with sports wagering and everything else that goes on in our unit. So all I wanted to do was just bring an update. Of course, Board Member Green, if you have any comments to this, the chapter 17, it's in the rulemaking process. Obviously, there's time limits in the rulemaking process. So if this is going to extend any further than those timeframes, we might want to look at possibly republishing to keep that clock rolling. I would ask the AAGs if they have any comments in that regard, but I don't have any specific dates and deadlines and all that sort of thing, but I know we're on a clock. So I just wanted to bring it up. There's nothing specific, no support documentation to anything, just maybe offer Board Member Green with the opportunity to give the board an update as well as to the meetings that we've had so far and what we'll have in the very near future.
Okay.
So thank you. So we did have a productive meeting with one of the surveillance vendors. Unfortunately, there were a number of unanswered questions still. I do want to talk to the IT folks at the casino. I also want to talk to the IT folks at the state. I think that's a really important part since that's sort of the end point, and those meetings have not yet been scheduled. So
Particularly since there was a breach at the state level.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and that's kind of that's the movement, and thousands of organizations across the country were impacted by that. But I do think since we're having a conduit between the state and the casinos, we need to have a comfort level as to how that connection is being made. I don't have that yet because we haven't had those conversations.
okay. Glad we have your expertise on this. So I guess you'll keep working at
We'll
it.
keep working at it. So
Okay.
if those meetings get scheduled, we will have them.
Okay.
We'll be able to complete those before the next meeting.
Sure. Great. Any questions for Ms. Green? All right, let's move on to new business. With the ADW comments. So, Bill, you want to?
Yeah,
Take
so as a part of the process, naturally with AD or LD 731 becoming law or approved by the governor on July 26th, we went into rulemaking right away, which I believe there was an emergency preamble attached to that bill. And therefore, we put together, we had a legal pre-review of the updated rules. Those rules were published. We asked for written comment, of which we received three comments are from three different individuals representing various companies. And so what I did was put together our basis statement because ADW is obviously under the purview of the board. And so I'm looking for a board response to include into the basis statement. Typically, these would be first, whether you accept the comment or reject it, and then the rationale behind it. I could probably fill that in a little bit on the conversations that you have today, but basically this is not a director response or a unit response. It requires board response. And so I sent the basis statement in advance. If you had any questions, I'm sure we have some representatives here that could answer some more of your questions. Should you have any, in addition to what the comments were already made. So basically, that's what I'm looking for is the board response. First of all, like I say, where you reject it or accept it. And then if you reject it, what would be the, I guess, the rationale around rejecting the comment.
Okay. So looking at the bill, who does these fiscal notes? Have they seen the revenue from ADW? They've got projected for $3 million. That's a lofty goal, but separate issue. We're gonna do what, 300,000 this year? So I don't know, maybe you'll 10x the state, Churchill. I don't know. Seems crazy, but before we get started, is anyone, so we know Churchill's here, anyone here from First Tracks or ExpressBet. You know, if anyone on Zoom is from those companies.
Chair Silver, it might not be appropriate to take additional comments at this time. The public comment period is set under the APA rulemaking. And if we didn't publish that we were going to have a hearing on this rulemaking, it wouldn't be appropriate necessarily to have individual representatives speak where we haven't given every public member the same opportunity.
Well, this was on the agenda. And if we have
But-
questions,
But not, it wasn't publicly noticed as a hearing on the rulemaking. It's put on the agenda for you to discover or to discuss the basis statement and provide your response to the comments. If we want to republish the rule
can we go through
and get
this?
additional,
Something else recently? Some casino issue. Then we had to republish and the whole thing. I mean, why can't we ask questions, get answers, move on? You know, everyone wants to get this launched.
we certainly can schedule a public hearing under the APA to take all variety of public comments. You could ask questions at that time. That's the appropriate mechanism in the formal rulemaking process.
It isn't.
It's the same issue that you were concerned about. It's a notice issue to any possible concerned person who would want to comment on it.
This was on the original agenda, so.
But
The issue.
it's not on the, it's not on the agenda as a public hearing where everyone is allowed to comment. It's simply on the agenda as a matter of board business, where the board is supposed to finally review and adopt the rule, which is not usually a period at which public comment is taken.
Okay, so. It says ADW written comment review. I assume everyone know that. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna talk about it as board.
Mhm.
People have public comment during the public comment session. Feel free to say what you want. Because. You know, so we're not reinventing the wheel here with this. So let's go through some of these comments. See if we can work some of them out ourselves. So the first one, Mill, this is involving the new section 1073-4C requires licensees to accept wagers on all live races being conducted in this state that are available for simulcast. And so we have proposed changed where the tracks would provide a statement about the races they've made available. Is there an issue with that? And if it's the same requirement that the OTBs have.
Me personally, I don't see the need for it. It's already a requirement in statute, so. This is maybe for clarity.
Yeah,
I don't know that it's necessary, but in there, we can certainly accept it.
okay. All right, let's skip that one and come back to it.
Oh, can I ask one question?
Yeah,
So the proposed language that's in here, does that come from you or your office? And now you're saying you don't need it? I'm just a little confused.
No, this is a comment from First Tracks,
Right.
which is First Tracks and then.
I know the proposed language is their proposed language.
Correct.
Got it. Sorry. Okay.
yeah.
Got it. Okay.
All right, let's come back to that because the next one seems a little easier about employee licensure requirements. So the comment is that it's read broadly, you know, where I don't believe it was the intent that every employee of an operator needs to be licensed. I think what we do. I think the key employees. If they're not in the state, but I don't know if you have thoughts on it. That's what we do for everything else. Isn't it, Mill?
Yeah, I mean, typically we would vet the employees and what they actually do within the organization. So just as an example, sports wagering, obviously there's technicians, there's wager providers, there's managers and all that sort of thing. So while we get an org chart, we look at specifically what one would have to do access to patrons' accounts and stuff of that nature. So we would require them to be licensed. So it's not a situation where everybody that has anything to do with ADW within the business entity is required to have an employee license. So that's vetted through us, and in some cases, it's even negotiated a little bit. We obviously look for the input from the applicant as well.
Okay, so I think, I don't know about this proposed language, but generally, right, we want to license the sort of the similar level of key employees or those who are, I don't think any are going to be on the ground doing business here, but to the extent they are, that would make sense. Yeah. I don't know. What do y'all think? Yeah. So I don't know how you want to phrase that board response, but I think we're in agreement that it needs to just be clarified. That we're not actually saying every employee of these operators needs to be licensed. I'm not sure how to massage that language, but that's what that makes sense. The next one is something I'll defer to Ms. Green, the SOC 2 type 2 audit.
Well, I guess one, I don't understand, one, I don't understand why we're asking them to do that. And two, do we place that type of audit requirement on any other group of vendors that we work with?
SOC 2 type 2 requirement was with conversation with Maine IT, with conversation of the local Brunswick data center, with conversations of other people in the industry, not specifically in the casino industry, but the IT industry that I could reach out to, or the surveillance. This arose from our review of split wagering, whereby up to this point, almost every state requires an assessment of the system. And so I didn't feel, I looked at it as assessment is obviously very gray, very generic. An assessment could be merely walking in and making sure all the blue lights on the servers are blinking off and on and looking really pretty. The room's air conditioned or something like that. So when I went to Maine IT, I actually had Maine IT look at the sports wagering rules. And it was their recommendation, followed up by the data centers and so forth and so on, that SOC 2 type 2 would be appropriate. Now, the way I was described with it was SOC 2 type 1 is where they let you know that they're coming. And SOC 2 type 2 is kind of like they show up and do that sort of assessment.
Can I just interrupt you there? Because that's just not accurate. And I don't want that read into the record that way. That's not what a SOC 1, a SOC 2, and a SOC 3 are. A SOC 1 is a report on internal controls related to financial, and it is the scope is agreed upon between the audit company and organization that's being audited. A SOC 2. We'll talk about type 1 and type 2. So there's SOC 1, SOC 2, and SOC 3. SOC 1 is financial control. SOC 2 is based on the trust service principles. And the SOC 3 is similar to a SOC 2, but doesn't include the proprietary information and the testing information. It's more of a marketing document. The difference between type 1 and type 2 is type 1 is report on controls as of a certain date. So it's really, has this control been implemented on a date? A type 2 is over an operating effectiveness over a period of time, either 6 months or 12 months. So it's not just show up. It's always going to be scheduled. There's very, very different ways of looking at it. I happen to think SOC 2 type 2 reports are very adequate reports. It's really unusual that all 5 trust principles are ever required. And I don't have as much of an issue of doing it for ADW. I just feel if we're going to request of ADW vendors, then it should be of all vendors or that provide technical services to us. That was really my comment.
Right now, it's in the requirement for sports wagering, and it's in the requirement. We just adopted the requirement in fantasy. So again, it
would seem like, for example, the surveillance companies that we've been talking to.
Yeah.
Are we asking them to do one? Because but they have a connectivity and they provide services and get, have data as well. So it just, there's an inconsistency that I'm about.
Yeah, SOC 2 Type 2s are in relation to the actual system, the wagering systems.
Mhm.
And has nothing to do with surveillance.
Right, but they're often done on data centers. They're done on generally any provider that provides some technical service, and that's why. So I guess my two comments on this would be, all 5 trust principles is significant. They are right that it's very expensive. Whoever made this comment is, I think, a little bit optimistic that it's 50 times more expensive than a PCI, because you can't get a PCI audit done for $1,000 anywhere. But I don't know if we want to look at, if an assessment has to be done, if we want to look at more than some options. It could be a SOC 2 Type 2, it could be a, PCI, it could be an ISO certification. I don't know if we want to be thinking about that, or if we just want to decide across the board, all of our vendors are going to be required to provide a technical service or a data center service are going to be required to provide this type of report. That's my comment.
Also, this comment is correct. It says you'd be the first state to require this for an ADW platform. Which, may be good, may be bad, but we're a pretty small population in terms of revenue compared to others. They're not doing it. But is there some alternative?
Well, I think that if we're talking about assessments, I mean, made the suggestion of accepting their PCI DSS certification. I mean, there are a host of other things. Again, I'm not necessarily saying we shouldn't have them do a SOC 2 Type 2. I just feel like to pick and choose type of vendors that are going to be required, opposed to applying this to all vendors that may provide technology services or data center services to us.
Is there a difference for those that are handling money, like consumer money?
Yes, this is really data. We're really talking about data, connectivity, technology.
How about the comment at the last paragraph where saying if we are going to require this, they would want some clarification about the year. What would we do? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm fine. I don't have any comment on that.
Okay. So how do we want to move forward?
Wait till public comment.
Okay.
Hear public comment today.
All
Well,
right.
If I could suggest you certainly could hold another hearing on this rule. Board Member Green could also consult with the department and draft potentially new language. If there is new language that you think would be more effective to accomplish the goal that isn't specifically this, and that might also be responsive to the comment, that would be another possibility. And then we would be republishing the rule and be getting comment. We could hold at that time an open hearing, accepting both spoken comment, and you can ask all your questions at that time, and then also receiving written comment. That would be the process that might most effectively address the concerns I think that are being raised here.
Yeah, we're headed down that route. I think there's a couple of these we can knock off so that the next round is limited. I mean, we've resolved the one issue. They don't need to be republished anyway with the response. Let's go to this advertising thing. Because I know this is a big deal for sports wagering. Why are we requiring the operators to retain their advertisements for 3 years?
We do it in every other area. It's really hard when I first came up here, it was like, you're gonna have 2 casinos when you feel like you'll be bored. I can tell you, I'm not bored at all. Because I sit at my desk, I have 4 hats. I put on the casino hat, then I have a question about sports wagering, put that on, then I have fantasy, put that hat on, then I have charitable, put that hat on. And so all I'm trying to do here is maybe create some uniformity so that I don't have to go back and say, okay, casinos get 3 years, charitable gets, 30 days, fantasy gets, whatever. So it's really just trying to create some uniformity. This wasn't reinvented. And I believe it's a requirement in the other areas that we regulate as well. So that was really the purpose.
Well, they're different. I mean, they're all fundamentally different, so, I think the rule as written is too broad, in my opinion. Particularly understanding the differences in how some of the advertisements are, right? There's a difference between a commercial or a poster and you getting a targeted link from an affiliate site or getting a hit based on your Google search. So I don't know. I think that needs to be tightened up a bit. And I know it was in sports betting and this was not a subject of the comment, but the prohibition on athletes, celebrities, entertainers. I'm not even sure if that's constitutional, but and how do you determine who's targeting those under 18? I don't know. There weren't comments on it, but I just think that's overbroad. Maybe cartoon characters make sense, but I don't know. So, I don't know, any thoughts from the board? Have we ever had an instance where we had to go back 3 years and look at an ad?
Back, 3 years?
Yeah.
Basically, it just gives us a time frame. If a patron makes a complaint, we can go back to it. They hold on to the advertisement. And when I first came up here, I was getting copies of every advertisement. And I was like, whoa, stop that. We don't have the files. We don't have the data to be able to store these things. And so we made the change to, you just hold on to them. If we need them, we can reach out and get a copy of it.
Yeah.
So I have just a question on that. So are we saying in here also that social media posts are being considered advertisement?
Oh, that's part of the issue, right?
Because I think
Because the proposed rule is pretty broad. Is
I
it
think-
saying, the proposed rule says, copy of all advertising, marketing, branding, and other promotional materials. So yeah, it could be social media post.
And I think the other challenge in this, and really speaking either for or against it, is, often when you have Google doing your advertisements or Facebook, whatever, they're going to serve up ads that you may not even recognize. And they're going to be input, they may be served different places.
Right, and that's
And
the
maybe
other
it's
thing with the rules, there's a log of when, how, and with whom those have been published, aired, displayed, or disseminated. I'm
And-
not even sure how you get
And
that.
all you're going to get from Google Analytics, for example, is going to be, summary reports. X percent of, 18 to 25 male, opposed to necessarily who. So I think when we're talking about online, it just becomes somewhat problematic to provide.
Yeah, no, I agree. All right. We got some work to do on that one. The next one, you can see the comment about the investigation fee. I would reject that, but I'll let you two take a look. I think that becomes insanely burdensome. You charge the fee is what it is.
Mhm.
I don't think we should be in the business of deciding if there's, some fraction that wasn't spent or whatever, but.
Not able to get in my Dropbox. What is the comment?
Says, while an applicant may be invoiced for additional costs, we would propose the inverse, where an applicant may receive a refund for any portions of the one-time investigation fee which are not consumed by the investigation.
No. Burdensome.
So I think that one, at least Chief March and I would say we can just reject. Sorry, I don't know if you have comments on that.
I would agree.
So that one can be rejected, Bill. Required text and advertisements. So the proposed rule says advertising must include a disclaimer as follows, quote, persons under 18 years of age may not participate in advanced deposit wagering, and the 1-800-GAMBLER hotline phone number for assistance. And so the comment we received was, advertising must include a disclaimer stating that individuals under 18 years of age are restricted from participating in wagering and include a problem gaming hotline number, such as 1-800-GAMBLER. Parsing hairs a little bit. But the issue is just operating in different jurisdictions. Everybody has different language and telephone numbers. So. I don't know.
If I may, in
Go ahead,
response,
Bill.
if I may, in response to that, the National Problem Gambling Association, in conjunction with other states, have come up with the utilization of the 1-800-GAMBLER number, which we also use in sports wagering. And I don't know if we have it fancy or not. I'd have to put that out on later. But the 1-800-GAMBLER is typically, even though it's on the ad, when you actually hit that link, it goes to Maine 211. There's not a central located 1-800-GAMBLER calling center for all states. It's just so that when they do specifically regional advertising, if they have regional advertising, other advertising were in for the states in the Northeast, they would have to change that 1-800 throughout for each individual state. So they'd have Maine 211, they'd have Massachusetts 345, they'd have Rhode Island 649, all that sort of thing. So it was, I guess, all the states got together, or at least with the National Problem Gambling Association, decided that the 1-800-GAMBLER would be the generic link. And then it would, as you call that number, as I stated, it would go to your specific state's problem gambling center. So that's why we use that.
But it doesn't look like the proposed language is asking to remove the 1-800-GAMBLER. It's more just to have some more latitude in how it's actually worded.
Yeah. Which I'm fine. I mean, instead of, I think they want some flexibility on the language. I'm fine with the proposed. I would be fine with the proposed language, except at the end where it says include a problem gaming hotline number, such as something that said, a problem gaming hotline, for Maine or, I don't.
It serves Maine customers, yeah.
Yeah. Something to that effect. Bill, does that make sense?
It's really a gambling hotline number that would connect to a 211 service. Right?
Yeah.
That's really
Yeah.
Yeah, basically, they recommended changing, persons to individuals, and then they said, and include a problem gambling hotline number such as, well, we're saying we specifically want you to use 1-800-GAMBLER. So I would reject this honestly and have it written, but it's. think it still attains the same goal. It's just how it's written. And I think we need to be more specific to say, yes, we want you to use 1-800-GAMBLER.
Well,
And Chair Silver, I think your suggestion, as I understood it, was to replace the language in the proposal such as 1-800-GAMBLER with include a problem gaming hotline number that serves Maine consumers. Was that?
it
your
would be
suggestion?
unless, except I'm hearing that 1-800 is connecting to Maine and that's the preferred number. I'm inclined to go with Milt's recommendation. So I would be inclined to just reject it based on Milt's recommendation, but you all might feel different.
I think there's a middle ground there, right? We can give them latitude for how they want to state it, but they have to include the 1-800-GAMBLER. I think really what they're just saying is,
Yeah.
instead of specific, give them some latitude in the specific language, but not on the telephone number.
I see that.
Accept in part and reject in part.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So just some disclaimer restricting people under 18, but it must include gambler. There's a comment about, it looks like a typo.
Yeah.
So just accept that. Okay.
The next one I've already talked, it's really very similar to
Thing.
what we talked about.
Yep. Okay. All right, the next one involves, well, we skipped another SOC 2 type 2. We're on the license fee. Not quite sure I understand the comment. Doesn't matter where. Go to section 3. Bill, does the residents matter? They need a license. Pay the fee, right?
Still on number 9. Residency documentation.
It's about the initial application fee for an employee license. I'm not numbered. I'm on page 6.
Subsection 9, establishing an account.
No,
No.
3.5.
Your advanced deposit wagering license.
Initial application fee for employee license. Okay, and the question is,
I guess I don't understand the comment. In the fee. Oh, the fee is the fee. Right? If they need to be licensed, pay the fee. It doesn't matter where they live. At the time they apply. I mean, they could be moving to Maine. I don't know. Just doesn't. Yeah, they're trying to read in a Maine residency requirement for this stuff, and I don't see that.
I agree, it's not referenced in the statute.
So. Yeah, I would reject that comment.
Agreed.
All right. See that, Milt?
Subsection 9, residency documentation.
No.
Rejecting,
No,
accepting that.
no. I don't know what you're talking
Comment.
about. We're on page 6.
I'm looking at the basis statement.
Comment is about the initial application fee for an employee license under section 1015. The very first comment.
Yeah, this is something to do then. We went past the SOC 2 type 2. We
Yeah.
went past the other definition.
That's right.
Okay, so you're on the next page. All right.
So the first one we're rejecting.
The second one we went past, just to clarify, that really harkens back to an earlier discussion where it's not all employees, we're really just looking at just perhaps high-level employees or employees at discretion of the unit.
Yeah.
So that the second one ties into that earlier discussion, correct? Okay. So this one would also be licensing only those, not everybody, right? Licensing just those who
Yeah.
are, and going back to those high level or
Yeah.
ones that the unit decides opposed to their concern about everybody.
The section of the rule is just, it just is listing the fee. So if it's determined that they need a license, you pay the fee. Doesn't matter where they live.
Right, but the fee will only be on the employees that the unit designates has to have a license. Going back to 2 other related comments.
Sure. Yeah, but the comments for that one and the next one are about implying a residency requirement. That's not. That's,
Yeah, no, I understand. I'm just
Yeah.
trying to pull these comments together, that's all.
yeah. So that's the next one, the fee for a criminal history record check. $51 for occupational applications only. So one of the comments is about that is not defined. Does it need to be?
I don't think so. I think it's clear that it's referring to the employee license. Suppose the rule could reflect language that more corresponds with the wording of the statute.
Yeah, I don't see why we would introduce a new term
Right.
that's not
Yep.
the same as what we've been using consistently.
So maybe accept in part and reject in part. And yeah, it's not about the fee or the residency, it's just about.
It's just about the term
Language.
occupational application.
Yeah. Okay.
Either we define it or we make it consistent.
So instead of instead of occupational, we want to change that to employee. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, let's just make it consistent.
Never do.
This is about, the next comment is about a bond to secure the ADW accounts. Yeah, I don't really care what Oregon does. To be honest, so our legislature, deemed this worthy and I would reject this comment. You might have other thoughts. Yeah,
Good
All right.
comment.
Not relevant.
we're good rejecting it, Milt.
Good.
And then looks like the last one is also about the 800 gambler, and we already dealt with that, so. Same thing as the one from above. And then I think we'll need to republish. Be slightly narrowed down for another round of comments, and we're gonna want a hearing. So we can have some back and forth with the potential licensees.
Okay, so in that republishing and with the public comment, are you going to take comments on everything, or are you just going to take it on the SOC 2 type 2?
On the items, well, the two SOC 2 type 2s, and then the items that were in part, accepted in part, rejected in part. So I believe we accepted one in whole of the typo, and then we rejected some in whole. So it'll be the things that still have some open-ended parts. It's not going to be comments on all of the rules. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so when we republish it, then we're going to only accept comments on the SOC 2 type 2. The advertisement.
Well, it's going to be, I'll just go through them now. So are you with me on the first page? So the first one about 1073 4C, that's going to be republished. Okay. About the simulcast agreements. First one. Very first one.
Oh, okay. On the first tracks comments, the very first one.
Yep.
Okay.
That's going to be republished.
Okay.
Employee licensure. We've accepted in part, rejected in part. We need to clarify as to which employees need to be licensed. So I think whatever the new sort of proposed language is from our end, it's going to have to be, it's going to have to be republished.
Okay.
SOC 2 type 2 republished. The advertising about retaining the advertisements and the log of all these things, that there needs to be clarifying language as to what exactly
Is included.
Because certain social media, maybe, right? You do a set Instagram post, okay, you have the post, but with Google Ads, the affiliate links, things like that, it's very hard to keep track of.
We publish that.
There's got to be, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and maybe the potential licensees could propose some specific language. If it's from other states or wherever, or the AGA, that would be helpful versus us rewriting this thing.
Just for clarity, does that resolution expect the unit to maintain the archive for 3 years or the licensees?
The licensees. Yeah. The investigation fee, we rejected. The required text was accepted in part, rejected in part, so that new language will need to be republished. The residency thing was accepted, so that's out. Then we've got another SOC 2 type 2 and thing, so that'll put that back up. The next one is about the employees again, who exactly are we talking about? So that refers back to the earlier thing, which we should be able to provide some clearer language that can be republished. In terms of the initial and renewal employee fees, we rejected that, so that's done. criminal history. We're going to accept in part, reject in part to clarify about that occupational language. So that'll need to be republished. The bond, we rejected. That's done. And then the last one is again about that 800 gambler and stuff. So, you know, the new proposed text, which will just be sort of a more discretionary language about 18 years, but a mandatory on the 800 gambler, that'll need to be republished.
Okay.
So everyone will have an opportunity to provide written comment. I think because we've narrowed it down, it would be useful. We want to propose specific language that we can look at, and then we'll have a hearing. We could do it after a meeting, couldn't we? Same
Yeah, you
day.
can, yeah, you can do it right in the middle of a meeting.
Yeah. So,
It can just be an agenda item.
so I don't know what the lead time is on republishing, doing all that, but wherever it falls on the calendar, we'll have a hearing.
I can have it done and ready to schedule by the January meeting.
Perfect. So, come to Augusta, be on Zoom. We'll be able to have a conversation about it. You know, my preferred method of dealing with this crowd. So, all right. So we got through that. Let's move to some internal controls. Why not? So next up is with Hollywood. Austin, you want to talk us through what's going on here?
Yes, good morning, everyone.
Hello.
And I first wanted to echo Milt in thanking the Oxford team for their hospitality. We're very excited to be at a casino. I know we talked about it for a while. And I'm grateful to hear that there is a tour set up. I just think it helps everyone as we discuss the various complexities of our industry. And we look forward to hosting all of you at some point, sometime in the future. In beautiful Bangor.
Yeah, we will.
Only
We
fair.
will be at Hollywood, maybe after winter, for everyone's travel, but,
No rush. It's gonna be all this summer.
yeah, no, I'd like, you know, we should like figure it out and go to Acadia after, you know. be nice.
Team building,
That's right, yeah.
Trust Falls and all.
So 2024, we'll be up in Hollywood.
Looking forward to it. So hopefully this will be brief. As you recall, I can't remember when, but much earlier this year, the board approved pretty extensive changes to the minimum mature controls. I think it was hundreds, if not thousands of changes. So the licensees have been working to draft updated internal controls to reflect those changes. And it looks like we're both ready to present those for approval today. We've worked with Vicki and her team. I think we got 99.9% of the way and worked through all those issues. But we do have a handful of waivers. I don't know if we want to call them waivers or board approvals for a variety of different things that I wanted to review with you today, if that's okay. I think first on our list that you were submitted for was for the cards and for the destruction. We already worked through that, I think, in a resolution last meeting, so I'll skip that. The next is surveillance systems. If you recall, the retention moved from 7 to 14 days. Our current system cannot comply with that completely, most cameras, but not all. We are in the process, I believe the week after Thanksgiving, the massive surveillance system upgrade begins at our property. I don't have a complete timeline. We're essentially asking for an extension to the end of the year. We will be compliant, and frankly, our surveillance system will be light years ahead of where it is once that project is completed in the very near future.
And is that enough time? End of the year?
I think so. Maybe if it's just until the next board meeting, I can give you an update. If not, we've just been trying to get them scheduled back on the schedule to begin the project. We haven't focused as much on when it's going to finish, and I tend to not take what they tell me too seriously because these projects tend to drag on. But I know it's going to start at the end of the week after Thanksgiving. I believe it should be done by the end of the year, but if you want to say by the end of January to be safe, I think that's fine.
I think with the holidays, more time makes sense.
Yeah, that's true. The holidays, things tend to take a little longer.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not making a decision, but my inclination would be to make it the fifteenth, if we're meeting on the sixteenth of January.
That's fair. And again, I can give the board an update if we don't, if something happens and we're not quite there yet.
Not deciding, but continue.
Ms. Green might have more of an idea of the timeline than I am, not expert, but my understanding is they're tearing the entire thing out, putting a new one in, so it's the depth of my complexity. The next one also, and hopefully will be quite straightforward. So this one we just missed, but we have a combined slot and table games department called casino operations. So we have one head of that department. The IX or the mix required kind of a head of slots and tables. This has been the way we've operated for as long as we can remember, and it's frankly how pretty much the entire industry operates at this point. They've combined tables and slots. We're just asking for approval to continue as we have been. We still have separate and distinct leadership of these different departments. It's really just this head. It's really him. His name is Mark. It's very good. Can ask him questions if you'd like.
Could I actually ask a clarifying question about that?
Yes.
And, so does the gaming operations department then report to the general manager? Because the current language has the slots or the table games person reporting to the general manager. Is this just an intermediate, the gaming operations department then reports to the general manager?
Yes.
Okay.
If you took, there's a leader, one person is both 9 and 10, and that person reports to me. That makes sense.
Yes, thank you.
If there's no questions, I'll keep going. And then the last is kind of technical. My head of finance is here. He can maybe answer some things, but we just missed this quite frankly, but it requires the count team to essentially count total at the end of the count. I think it's E through K, which is currently a function done by our audit team. It's a line drop, and essentially the reason we could comply with this, we think it's an industry best practice not to, because if you were counting your own totals, you have the opportunity to adjust the amounts. And you will see that there's a variant, you can make adjustments. It's just something, we want an independent party to double check the work of the count team. Again, very standard, something we've done as long as we can remember. It's something we'll suggest the next time we go through mix changes, but it's something we're asking for a waiver for now.
Yeah. Thank you. You stay there because you might have questions. On the surveillance extension, any issues, Milt, on your end? We were to extend that?
No, actually what happened is they were gonna have the install earlier, I forget what month or what time frame it was, but through a request for some 30-day temps for technicians, it was discovered that the surveillance company at the time wasn't licensed. So they kind of had to put the brakes on. That company has since been licensed, they're ready to go. And so, yeah, I'm okay with any type of extension, sure.
So what I would say is we make it January 15th, it gives you a little extra time. Also, you can then tell whoever is doing the work. We set it, yeah, we set a deadline.
Till them end of the year.
Right, well,
They're not on.
but so then you can provide an update at our next meeting. Hopefully that it's done. If not, we'll deal with it. Do we need to take a vote on that?
Think, go ahead and take a vote on it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right, so, yeah, so it'd be to move to extend that. So 2-C surveillance deadline until January 15th, 2024.
So
Extend the surveillance deadline to January 15th.
second, Mark.
Okay, Ms. Green.
Aye.
Chief March.
Aye.
I'm an aye as well, so that is done. The next involves the language, head of slots, head of table games. I don't know, a waiver or I don't know what the term would be to make it casino operations.
Yeah, I think technically you just need to make a determination whether you consider that to be a conflict in the organizational structure that they're offering and the criteria that are listed in the internal controls under section 2D.
Are the individuals licensed who are under?
Yes.
Okay.
So in the rule itself, it says for the following positions or their equivalent. So wouldn't we be able to accept the combined position as an equivalent?
Or wouldn't we just add, what's the title? That's your head of,
Have to reopen. And we'd have to reopen
Yeah.
making for internal controls and until that is done, essentially my understanding was we're asking for you to approve our internal controls as written with these in there, with these exceptions to the mix. For the time being.
yeah, I mean, so, but your head of slots and head of table games are licensed.
Yes.
Yeah.
And are separate people.
They're not separate people.
But we don't say separate people.
That's the detail.
But I thought you said there were somebody under him.
Individual leaders that report to him underneath him in separate departments. It's.
Yeah, I think that's
I
the
could show
thing
you
we're
more
trying to understand.
Sense maybe, but
Do you by any chance have that with you?
I can provide it to you.
Okay.
It's actually in the internal control submission. I don't know if that's in your Dropbox, so. But I think the sticking point, if I recall correctly, was that these individuals have to report directly to me. And we do not have an individual in the slot department and the table game department, separate individuals reporting to me. It's him. Aside from that, I mean, there are no issues.
If I may, the easy fix here is these particular heads of departments are not specifically in the mix. It's in the resolution 8. And so the quick fix would be to go back to 8. Resolution 8 and change head of slots, head of table games, take those 2 out and put head of casino operations. That way it would fix this.
If I could just offer a slightly different perspective, the 2D subsection B says, in addition to satisfying the requirements of A above, and this is in the mix, the following departments and supervisory positions are at a minimum required. Each of these departments and supervisors shall be required to cooperate with, yet perform independently of all other departments and supervisors. And then if you go down to 3, you have listed as separately a slot operations department and a table game operations department. And so those are required in the mix to be separate positions and operate independently. So I think there is one, again, I thought earlier you had said that the slot position was separate from the table games. And they both reported to gaming operations, but you're saying instead that there's just a gaming operations person who does both things. Is that correct?
No, they are separate.
Okay, all right. So there is an intermediate person. Yeah, yeah, okay.
He has slot supervisors and table game supervisors, but there are casino managers who are over both, and he's over both.
Yeah, okay. So there is an independent person, and I think under the mix, you could make a determination that does not conflict with the organizational criteria listed below and could approve the mix if you found them sufficiently acceptable. If that accomplishes the separation of those 2 positions, even though they report not directly to the general manager, but to a person who reports to the general manager. I think that's the determination that you could make if you were inclined to approve this request.
How many supervisors are there for each department?
2, 3. And well, there's a tech manager on the slot side, and you do have 3, 4, 5 audited rates on the table side.
They all are at the same level? Or is there one?
Yes, but separate, distinct.
Yeah.
Our position in the long term, though, is that there should be no separation. There's no operational justification for that. And we would ask in the future for a mixed change like that.
What's the path of least resistance here?
Well, I just want to ask again, because I think that the way it's written, it's okay, because it does say the following positions are their equivalents. And what we're being presented with is effectively equivalents.
Sure.
I mean, that would be my read. I mean, an equivalent that we're comfortable, that at this point, we're comfortable with.
Yeah, I'm fine with changing it. My question is more, how do we do it? Like, what's the,
I guess I was saying, I wonder if, because it says in the statute, and I could be incorrect here, positions or their equivalent, do we actually even have to change it? We're saying that they are presenting an equivalent, and so are any changes necessary?
I don't know, this also refers to a board resolution 8,
Which is about casino applications. It's a definition related to casino applications, not necessarily specifically related to this.
right, so on the resolution part, we can
I
we
don't,
can change that.
I don't think you need to consider the resolution
Okay.
here. And I think the sort of tiered answer to Board Member Green's question is that interposed between what you were just talking about is the actual adopted mix. And so we have to follow that process. And I do think that there is a potential for the board to consider whether you think that there is a conflict by the submitted internal controls. And if you find under the current mix that there isn't a conflict and that is satisfactorily compliant with the organizational criteria, you could simply approve as requested the submitted internal controls from Hollywood.
So I would move that we approve as requested. Internal controls.
I'll second it. Any further discussion?
I think that's that least resistance.
That's great.
Aye.
Chief March?
Aye,
An aye.
there you go.
That's done.
But with that approval, can we go back and reopen up resolution 8 because it says head of slots and head of table games? So
Yeah, but it says or their equivalent, so we know who the equivalent is.
say that in resolution 8.
Yes. Says resolve. For the purposes of casino application for licensure, the following positions or their equivalents are deemed to be key employees.
Okay.
There it is.
All right, this last one I'm not clear on. Milt, have any insight into this? The count?
No, it's understandable. From what I'm gathering, it's just being done by a different department. Person, count versus audit, so. They want to signify that next week and approve it. We can approve it.
What's explain your preferred process and what you think this requires you to do?
So it's cash handling. Best practice is a blind drop. So the people who count the money aren't the same people who total it and verify the amount. And in that way, it's very common in pretty much every cash handling function. And again, Kyle probably can explain this more. He's been doing this in the finance function a lot more. But essentially what we're saying is we have an audit function who goes and double checks the totals and the amounts. And that's the way I believe most casinos do it. So that if there is a variance or we have an electronic totals at the end of the day, and then the count team takes the physical amounts and we verify those two amounts. And what we're saying is we believe it is a best practice that the audit team does that reconciliation and says, hey, we're missing $500. We have a problem here, as opposed to the people in the room doing the counting, doing that reconciliation, saying, hey, I'm missing $500. I better find a way to make a difference or I'm in trouble. Again, we're getting to the same amount. All these functions are being done. We're just saying it's much better that we segregate these functions, but we have different people and we can again identify issues and correct them properly. Is that a good?
Yeah, basically you want the revenue auditors who are part of the finance function, same department, right, broad department, to determine the actual win on the table games versus the count team who are merely there to count the physical money. But the count team determines that when, as Austin mentioned, they can say, hey, win shows that we have $500 extra. So rather than reporting that as part of the cash, there could be the potential for some sort of. Which work.
See, it's very common in again, restaurants, bars, all these types of places. The supervisor is one who runs the totals at the end of the day, not the person with the pouch full of money.
Okay. And then, so this E through K on this document says the following is not currently listed as required. That.
In our internal controls, we did not include those. I believe this is what it was, but the internal controls requires that a function of.
I see.
So
Okay,
we've segregated in our internal controls, and we're essentially asking, just as we have the rest, for you to approve ours as written. All of these are being done. We're just saying we prefer to be the audit team, not the account team.
got it. Okay. All right. Any issues with us approving?
This one is a little trickier because the language is mandatory in the mix. And I am at 3-G-2H. The procedures and requirements for conducting the count shall be the following. Milt, I don't know if you want to weigh in on that or not. But you're reading.
I mean, if they want to redirect it, the goal is still accomplished at the same, the same, if the board wants to approve it. Like Austin talked about, it's going to be accomplished either way. Whether, it's just inappropriate, for the account team to do it when the actual audit comes in behind it. So mandatorily, it's getting done, it's just getting done by a different area. I believe Vicky has a comment.
Go ahead, Vicky.
Yeah, I just might want to point this out is, those specific things are just about tables. And the table count is it's dependent upon his staff to do a good job because there's no backup electronic method to track the money. And so for it to be participated by the count team, and I believe that stipulation is for both slots and counts, and those nuances don't apply to slots because they don't have openers, they don't have closers, they don't have any of that documentation.
Yeah. Sounds like things need to be changed.
Yeah, and again, quite frankly, this was a miss, and part of the reason was that I believe this has been in the mix. And it wasn't identified as a change when we went through this process, but this is the first time that we've gone through 30-40 pages of fine print, and we missed this in the review, but in our review identified that we had never, this had been our process forever and we were not compliant. So that's why we're attempting to fix some of these longstanding issues. And again, all of these that we've submitted, with the exception of the surveillance thing, would be when we open the mix, these are going to be suggestions we have to make changes in the future.
I'm fine with approving Hollywood's controls as written.
If so, I would so move the approval of Hollywood's controls as written.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? All right, take a vote. Ms. Green.
Aye.
Chief March.
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. So
Thank you very much.
3 for 3, Austin. Doesn't happen all the time.
Right. I'll get used to it.
All right, Oxford
Good morning, everyone.
with exhibits.
It's exhibits.
Okay.
There are 2 items that I believe we were not able to resolve. The unit. 2 of those items. Long-standing practices here. The first one is 3B1. which is adding the word, the gratuities language, separating it from services. Purpose behind this is in hospitality areas, which include restaurants, hotels. There are individuals who leave unredeemed Tito's as gratuities. They're not paying their bill with it. Being left. This was brought up back in 2015 to the board, and they approved the use of Tito's in those areas. They approved. Moving back from that would be basically taking money out of the pockets of those workers during a time where we're going to kick into already a full winter season.
So the issue is it says no ticket shall be accepted as payment for any goods or services. And your concern is that services could be read to mean gratuity.
Definition that we had talked with the unit as services including gratuities. Gratuities was including services. Our position is that it's not. Gratuity is something that is voluntary.
Okay.
And the second item.
Let's stick with that
Okay.
first. And this has been the practice.
Yes, that's, I believe, July 2015.
Okay. Was it ever before prior boards?
Yes,
What was their take?
it was approved July 2015 by the market. And it was in our previous internal.
Milt, got any comment on this?
I mean, no, not really. I always think in the minds of the bad guy or the one that wants to circumvent things. You know, Tito tickets get kicked out of slot machines, Tito tickets get dropped on the floor. So there's different scenarios. Obviously, if somebody's going to be honest and say, here's a $5 Tito ticket, here, go ahead and take it, redeem it for whatever. But again, is that also defined in the area of goods or services? If a slot technician or a slot attendant pays a jackpot to a person 5 times before they leave, and then they inadvertently give them a $5 or $10 Tito ticket, you know, that's straight up. But I just worry about the employee maybe finds a Tito ticket on the floor or finds one sticking out of a machine and all that, and it becomes a gratuity, when in fact it really isn't. So that would be my own position.
Silver.
And then again, the rule says you can't accept them for payment of goods or services, so.
Yeah, I mean,
And just to clarify, we do not allow any of the funds for team members to receive those as gratuities.
Yeah.
Anything lost.
but sure.
Chair Silver, could I ask a question?
Sure.
One of the things referred to in this change is that in compliance with the Oxford Casino written policy, is that something that has been submitted, and can the board?
Gift and gratuity policy has been submitted to the board.
And is that part of?
Approved in 2015. So
Okay, so it's not,
policy.
but it is not currently in front of the board, so we don't, is that right, Milt? Do we have access to that? Does the board in their material?
I've not seen it. I don't go any further than the rules, to be honest with you. You know, there's
I can provide it to
there's
you.
the law, there's rules, there's policies and procedures, there's standards, so anything under rules. You know, if it's not a part of the rule, it's a separate policy. It might be a business decision policy within the business, which they have the rights to do outside of the rules and or the laws. So I typically don't look at things, but that's not to say the board prior to didn't. Obviously, they did, but.
So isn't your concern the same? I mean, what's the difference? So you can, tip your dealers with chips.
Mhm.
And an employee sees a chip on the ground and takes it. It's the same sort of concern, but we don't ban the tipping at table games and, so,
We would just, again, this would be another line item to make a change in the future, because as it reads right now, no ticket shall be accepted for payment of goods or services. Now,
yeah, I mean, I'm not sure that. I understand the interpretation of services to include that. It's not necessarily how I would interpret it.
I I think that is the question that you can answer.
Yeah.
Here is how does the board interpret it? Does the board interpret services to include gratuities or not?
Yeah,
Karen?
what I think I'd like to see. I think you know where we're going with this, but I don't have your policy in front. I don't know if it's been updated since 2015 or not. Like if we can, it sounds like Vicky might have it, but just get it in front of us. I can see, I believe you when you say there's a policy that the employees shouldn't do this, but let's see it and then we can approve it in January. Unless other board members feel differently, I'm comfortable between now and then with you continuing to operate as you have.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to see the policy before we say, you know, it's subject in accordance to your policy.
So I feel very differently about that. So one, I'm fine with the Tito for gratuities. I have no issue with that. I think if the board has approved something, I think it's up to us. If we have an approved policy, why would we be asking the casinos to go back and find what we approved? It should be in our minutes, in our records, in our documentation.
Should be.
And I don't even understand why, if we've already approved it, why it comes back or why the rules weren't updated in accordance with what I wasn't on the board then, but had already approved. And I just don't feel like, I feel like this is our responsibility. If we approve something, that we should be the one to be able to, we shouldn't ask the casino to produce it, that's all.
We'll be happy to.
But just in going forward, though, I think that's our responsibility, right? That we should have our records. I'm sure you have it at top of file. I'm not worried about not being able to provide it. It just seems an odd thing to ask you to provide it. That's all.
Yeah, and we may have it, but
I would hope we have.
it's not in front of me. And, you know, the section saying accepted and subject to in accordance with their policy, so. You're gonna continue to operate how you've been operating. We'll get this resolved. I think you understand how I interpret services. Other board members may feel differently. I think we're all in agreement, but I just feel more comfortable to see the policy before we vote on it. So let's go to the next issue.
The next one is 2G, key controls D. We're running into another definition. The premise, according to the unit, was the four walls of the casino. Our property has outbuildings, finance, human resources, which I'll give you the tour later, and a walkway. There's security dispatch over to the administrative area where some of our team members, such as slots, reside. So if we were to accept the mix as is, every one of those slot managers would have to check in or check out their keys every time that they want to go over to their office. And what I've got is a couple of exhibits. I may help you zoom in on these.
Mhm.
This is the area that we're referring to. It's out back, and I think we talked through it during the initial review. This is the administration building. There's some lunch tables here. This is the walkway I'm referring to, the covered path. It does not go into the driveway, does not go into the parking lot. There are no cars back there. And let you know that that area, this is the camera coverage that we have on that area. Every bit as good, if not better, than some of our areas in the casino. So this is a practice that's been going on for 11 and a half years. To my knowledge, there's been no issues with that.
I thought we discussed it previously.
We did.
Yeah. Okay. But it's this definition of premise being
Yes, sir.
yeah. Okay.
So
The physical building as opposed to the property.
well, yeah, and we're calling it the monitored area because this area here, as you can see, is very well monitored.
Mhm. Monitored area.
Well, yeah. But if there's a covered walkway, right?
There's a covered walkway. There is a uncovered path over here to the HR administrative building.
No, it's really, how do you define connects? Right.
Which is why we, in our internal controls define it as monitored area.
Right.
And we'd be happy to put this map in the internal controls, so there is no question moving forward.
This
What
for
we're
keys,
This is for the sensitive keys.
sensitive keys
Yes.
leaving the perimeter
Yes.
of the gaming facility.
But theory, that walkway connects to the casino.
Yeah.
This is why people hate lawyers. Okay. Bill, any comment on this? You know, I mean, part of the facility, it's under surveillance coverage.
Mhm.
It's not going into the parking lot. Yeah. Any issues from the AAGs that should be aware of?
Yeah, I think articulated the issue regarding what the board is trying to find here, or at least discern whether connection is.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah, I mean, my concern was just if they leave a monitored area.
Yeah.
Right,
And the risk here is the loss of sensitive keys to a bad actor outside of the,
Which if there's a bad actor, it's not going to stop the bad actor. Yeah, this has been the practice for 11.5 years.
Oxford Chief Jack, any thoughts on that?
Done it for so long and now, I understand looking at it for sure.
Yeah.
We all know the concerns that we have recent events.
Well, I think the surveillance provides the redundancy of security that. Yeah, I think it's acceptable.
yeah, on this, I defer to you, because.
Yeah, well,
There is that one exposure, but
how do you,
covered.
how do you know if a disgruntled employee leaves with sensitive keys anyway? Hidden in their backpack or briefcase?
We have a key system that will alarm.
Yeah.
We heard one alarms after a period of time that they're not checked in. We have a new one that will alarm. We're hoping will work the technology. It's planned. Where at the perimeters, certain areas, there will be an audible alarm.
There'll be a sensor that says sensitive keys have left the secure
I
area.
believe that will be the case when we get this in. I can't promise it, it's technology. We've been very disappointed in technology in the past.
Is the understanding that that sort of a system would also monitor keys staying within the surveilled monitored area? And once it like almost like one of the dog fence in your front yard, once it leaves a certain.
Yeah, the new system, sorry, Eric Prince from Oxford, the new system that we're looking to get, Key Tracer, they use active RFID tags, so they're battery powered.
Yeah.
And we put antennas outside, and once they got within a certain distance of those antennas, not only would they alarm and audible and visual, but surveillance would also get a notification, and it would say who it is, what key it is, and what exit point that they are approaching. So they would go off before they got to the end of the monitoring zone to prevent them from exiting. And we could intercept if we needed to, like, let's say it was a disgruntled employee and they're running off the property, we could try to intercept before they got off the property. Or if most cases, somebody just forgot to turn on their keys because of whatever reason.
And I presume the system allows you to remotely in real time disable those sensitive keys. So there's no longer allowed access.
We can't disable them because they're key.
They're
But we would know what key has gone missing, and we could take steps at that point in time to do a rekey or something of that nature.
Okay.
But they're not a digital key, just the tracker is digital.
okay. So it's a metal cut key.
Yeah.
Do not duplicate kind of a.
Yeah. They're made by BSR, they're a dimple style key.
Yeah.
The only key that we've lost that we haven't found was flushed down the toilet.
Yeah.
So that one never left the building until like that.
Very expensive ordeal to rekey a whole facility like this.
Because of that, yes.
Are you satisfied with accepting the risk of keys leaving the perimeter of the physical facility?
There, it stops there.
All right. I'm fine with approving. I mean, I guess we're approving to adopt that highlighted language in your, where did this come from? Did you copy 2G?
2G D,
But what's that from? Is that from your controls?
yes.
All right. Okay. All right, any other questions? Okay, so I guess the motion would be to approve a waiver or just approve as written?
Yeah, I think you're
Approve
just
as written.
approving this insertion into their mix.
Okay.
So as approve as proposed by Oxford.
Okay. You want to take the,
I'll move that we approve the language as submitted by Oxford.
so I'll second. Any discussion? No? Roll call vote? What? Mill?
Is that both areas or just
No.
one area specifically you're both referring to that?
We're just talking about the keys.
Okay. Because somebody said approving what was submitted was two things. Two items.
With reference.
Clarify that.
Just the keys.
Relative to the key
I
issue.
think I made everything known with the Tito's. We'll deal with that in January. We clear?
We're clear.
All right. Chief March?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. Key
Can I go
issue
back?
resolved.
Tito, just for 1 second.
Yeah,
So the statement is no ticket should be accepted as payment for any goods or services, and payments usually, I think, defined or assumed that it's a requirement. But a tip isn't a requirement. So I don't even think it's as much of services the issue. I think it's clear that it's as payment, and a tip
Yeah.
is not a payment. So I guess I don't even see why we have to revisit it, because I think it's really clear.
well,
I'm with
we
Sarah.
would like to make a motion
I'm with you on
to
that.
approve. It sounds like there might be two votes to do it here.
I would make a motion to approve the first, the exception, how do you say it? The exception that Tito's can be used as a tip.
I would second Green's motion.
All right.
One thought, I think you have sort of two options here. One, you can interpret the language of your existing mix and just say service, payment for services does not include gratuities, or you can vote to approve the offered language. And I would suggest that it's probably better practice to do the first and to just say that our interpretation of this language is that payment for services does not include gratuities.
Does that need to
I
be-
echo that sentiment.
Does that need to be memorialized somehow?
Yeah, I think you can move and take a vote. And so
In the
I think,
motion.
yeah. And I just offer that for Board Member Green if she chooses to amend her motion at all.
I amend my motion as advised.
Okay.
I'll second the amended motion as advised to stipulate that Tito gratuities are gifts and not compensation.
All right, well, let's take a vote on Ms. Green's motion.
Aye.
Chief March?
Aye.
I will just abstain, but resolved. So, yeah. All right, so both issues are
Resolved, yeah,
taken care of.
Dispensed with, yes.
So with that approval, you don't want to see the written policy.
We don't, yeah, we're,
Does that approve the ICs as written?
Not as written, but
Yeah.
yeah. Not adding the K that was offered.
Right.
But adding two GD, and then I think the question is, do you then want to go ahead and make the full motion with the indicated responses to Oxford's questions, whether you want to then go ahead and approve the rest of the internal controls?
well, we did approve the key issue.
Right, but my understanding is there are sort of three issues. There are the two individualized issues, the Tito issue and the key issue. And then they are also offering their internal controls in toto for approval. Correct.
3-year process.
Yeah. And Milt can speak to the, I think, the general review of the internal controls if you would like to hear from him on that.
You can. I'm not sure we're gonna vote on that today.
So, yeah, so this is a two-part thing. First of all, we gave the copies of the internal controls for approval. And there was these few issues at each facility, which we resolved today. So I agree with AG Willis that we can approve each one of their internal controls with the few line items that have also been approved as a part of their internal controls.
Hollywoods aren't in front of us.
Hollywood's both of them were given to, were sent in the Dropbox.
Sure, but I'm saying we didn't
But
just
it's-
vote on that.
No, you have not voted on that yet, no. Basically, what I did is presented the internal controls that we've reviewed for your approval, with the exception of these 5 issues. 2 with Oxford and however many, 3 or 4 with Hollywood. If you approve those, then in essence, I think you can approve their internal controls if you'd like.
Yeah, the board members may feel differently, but in terms of approving the whole thing, I want to take a look through them again. So, we resolve the conflict, so in theory, there should be none. We can just approve them together, so.
No, do we approve the internal controls annually? It looks like they were approved on March 22nd, 2022. So how often do we normally approve them?
I'm not sure. I'd have to look at it again and see if there was, I think the Jen and Phil recommended a 2-year review, or every 2 years review them, or maybe that might even be another section. I apologize, but like I say, I'm 5 hats. I sometimes don't know where I'm at.
So like I said, if it's every 2 years, then really the next approval that we're looking at would be by March of 2024. Because this says approved March of 2022, which would give everybody time to look at them.
And I think that's certainly fine if you want to extend the deadline. I think part of this process, and feel free to weigh in, either Hollywood or Oxford, was that there were just significant rule changes by the board to the requirements for internal controls, which I think prompted a resubmission to be in compliance with the new board adopted rules related to the mix. Milt, is that consistent with your understanding of where we are? So I do think that they are submitting new mix to be compliant with the new board rules. And so this is a timely application, and you can certainly review them further and review the entire documents and can schedule your decision at some future meeting. But I think the reason that we're not hitting the 2-year interval right now is because there were just adopted new rules, and they are attempting to be in compliance with the new rules, the new adopted mix.
Going forward, do you know how often we
can look into that. I also don't have that answer at the tip of my fingers here, but we can get a clearer answer.
Thank you.
I think once we approve these controls, typically, we don't revamp and do a whole entire rewrite like we did with the rulemaking side of it. And so any type of changes that the facilities want to make in their internal controls, there's a form they submit, underline, strike through, format, it's reviewed, and then it goes back before the board for approval. So you may get bits and pieces over time, but I don't think we've actually scheduled to where the board does a whole encompassing review of their internal controls, but that's certainly up to you.
Either of you have strong opinions on it?
No.
Okay, well, I'd prefer to just make it an item in January. We'll approve both in total.
Mhm.
Give me an opportunity to go through them. I wanted to resolve these issues. We'll deal with it then.
That's practical.
Okay.
The board.
Any board business?
Do we have any update on the process to fill Dr. Brown's vacancy on the board?
Good question.
Yeah, the commissioners and board for the state of Maine have reached out to me one of the gentlemen, Mr. Boucher, is working on that. It's my understanding that he has some, he knows some folks on the harness side. I did reach out to the Harness Association and the executive director of the Harness Commission to kind of put some feelers out there to see who might be interested. So it's something that's being worked on because obviously we're starting the next legislative session in January. And that person would have to be confirmed by the VLA committee. So it's in the works.
Progress. Thanks, Mel.
And I'm sure there's people in this room who have connections to the harness industry, so that seat has to come from that background, so let people know. Right? We have an open seat. It's not up to us, up to the PLA committee to
Governor, right?
and the governor, but we'd like to get that filled. Anything else? Good question. All right. Public comment, to the extent there needs to be any, with in mind that there will be a public hearing on those things.
Before Lou goes, I just want to publicly thank both Supervisor Inspector Gardner and Chief Jack for working so hard with us during the couple of days of shutdown. They were available around the clock. They made sure that everybody was taken care of. They cannot thank you both enough. Thank you.
Very nice.
So I actually think that, you know, what we, the exercise in discussing whether the comments would be addressed in public comment. Honestly, most of the comments were addressed, and I don't think there's a whole lot to add. The only item, just for clarification, why we made the comment on required text and advertisements. If you go to like TwinSpires or honestly any sports wagering operator and look at the disclaimers and responsible gaming language at the bottom, when you have like specifically required text, started becoming a wall of responsible gaming messages. You know, there's just one that says one different game, it must be 18. It just makes it just cuts down on that. So it was really just about the fact that there was a specific line that needed to be. So I think everything.
Yeah. And our goal is that it would give you flexibility. Use the language you want, just with that number. And yeah, I mean, now that we have the ads, more of the ads, we see them. Yeah, you see the
This number in Colorado.
and then some have to be certain font sizes and other, yeah, I get it.
Yeah, similar. You know, with the advertising materials that I think you touched on, this is different than retail. I can go out there and tell you exactly what ads are on the floor right now, you know, come to online. I think Pennsylvania actually addressed this issue. They said we need you to retain advertisements targeted at PA residents, because we discussed earlier, we operate 30+ states, so advertising may go to, you know, we would be retaining advertisements targeted at a California player or a Pennsylvania player, main regulator review. So it just gets a little complicated. It is written as currently. One item I wanted to, and this is, but that's all. I really, we'll make comments. We'll attend the hearing. But I don't think there's.
If you'd also be willing to share that specific citation to the Pennsylvania language, that would also be helpful. And I think you could email that to Director Champion and it could be added to the materials.
All right, just getting serious. So I think that they actually have, they sent out like guidance. Document guidance, so I can provide that specifically. The AGA guidance on sports majors, we can provide. And we'll review that, but we can provide that. It actually does include entertainers that targeted it under 21 or under 18.
Yeah, I know it was an issue. I know it was an issue during the sports wagering. It's been resolved. I just think it's kind of crazy, but
They're in like a code of conduct because we're not being regular, you know, penalties for using.
yeah, I don't know. Is a certain horse a celebrity? Like if they're famous, I don't know.
So it's easier to deal with in a code of conduct vague. But I did want to address one item that came up earlier, which is item 17 or item 17, regulation 17 regarding the ongoing discussions about remote surveillance availability. We even encountered this because this is also in the sports rules. And while it's one thing when all you do is operate sports, like, but this rule and the sports rule would require us to also open up surveillance through the entire, to the casino floor. We don't have separate surveillance systems. So the fact that it's included in the sports rules brings in the casino. It's one of the issues that has given us pause in launching retail sportsbook or applying for retail sportsbook, because on one side, the board has concerns. We share those concerns, especially given recent data issues in Vegas and Maine, as well as just the specificity around the technical requirements. The same issues are in sports betting as well.
So what I would say is, because the legislature in its infinite wisdom decided to create this system we have now, and that's one hole, and there's others where we regulate the casinos except for we turn a blind eye to a sports book that's in the same building, right? So I would appreciate it if you and others want to contact the Judiciary Committee and the PLA Committee and express all of this, because there's going to be a lot of things they need to revisit. And I know that at least Senator Carney, who's one of the chairs of the Judiciary Committee, that's where the sports wagering bill came out of, is aware of this. So both need to be made known, because that's just one of many issues that we're going to deal with, because for whatever reason, it's been siloed, and somehow we're as a board responsible for what happens in this building except for sports betting. And that doesn't make sense to me, but it's not up to me. So it would be useful for someone like your organization to make that known to our local legislators, because they are going back in session in January.
So, yeah, but as we continue that discussion over remote surveillance, that is another one of our concerns with this issue. I mean, we have a number of issues with remote surveillance, as how, as proposed. I think Commissioner Green's comments were all accurate, meeting with vendors, understanding technical requirements, understanding how it's going to be accomplished. We have obviously concerns from an IT perspective, but it is also a barrier to sports. So your comments are received.
Yeah. All right, anyone else? Go ahead, Austin.
I'll be brief, and I know you're gonna groan.
Mhm.
In the spirit of transparency, I wanted to update the board quickly on what has transpired since we last met and the board approved the Chapter 13 rules, because when those rules went into effect, I believe on October 19th, we began to card all patrons as Oxford does. Our interpretation is it's the only way to comply with the requirement to exclude all patrons who are self-included. And so that has been our practice for a little under a month now. And I also know that I believe also the unit has received some phone calls based on that change that we've made. So again, I wanted to preempt that. Valerie's nodding her head. She's looking worn out. So since that time, we have carded 50,000 individuals and probably received many thousands of complaints. They've tapered off after the first couple of weeks. We've received lawsuit threats and all sorts of other violation of privacy type things, similar to what we expressed in our public comments that we provided to the board. That again has tapered off. The lines are a new normal for us, but they are not nearly as significant as they were the first couple of weeks as we've kind of improved the operation. I continue to be very nervous for the period of time this summer when we have concerts and other sorts of things, because it's going to be a madhouse. Again, just wanted to give you an update on what we did and how it's been going. Director Champion or your staff may have some more updates, but that's all I wanted to share.
Anyone else? Anyone on Zoom? Comment? All right. All right, with that, our next meeting is scheduled for January 16th at 9 a.m. We'll be back, well, not in the normal room, I guess, in
No.
the other, same building?
Yes.
45 numbers.
Champagne room, up in front. You won't have to walk as far back in the building.
Okay, obviously pending snowstorm, we'll deal with those as they come. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Oh.
Can we just hear from Mallory?
If you're shaking your head like yes, who's gotten comments, can we hear what those? Appropriate to hear from Mallory or whoever about what you've heard.
Cammy and I both answer the phone from time to time, and it's mostly just been, yeah, upset people who don't understand why they're being carded. Is it an age thing? We assure them it's not. Similar.
Their primary question is, what are you doing with my information? They're like, where is it stored? How long is it stored? Because I don't feel like you have a right to it, even though if you go to your local gas station, often they'll scan your ID. Just like Oxford or Hollywood does out here, so. They won't.
Do you ask them if they have players cards? Or if they've looked
Exactly.
up and seen the cameras?
So how do you answer? So when they say, what are you doing with my information? How do you answer that?
Well, basically, we tell them, well, we often refer to Vicky for more specifics, but we tell them that it's the individual casino's policy to choose how they enforce the rules that we have and the board has set out for them to follow, and how they've chosen to do that is to scan the IDs. It's the most efficient way. And it's their choice whether or not to comply. They can either comply and come play, or they cannot comply and not play. You know, it's their choice.
Let me also say that we've had maybe a dozen inquiries. It's not hundreds of thousands, and the phone's not ringing off the hook. It started when they started ID, and we got half a dozen calls, and some calls were twice, 2-3 times from the same person, getting more clarification. So it's not a huge number. I just wanted to clarify that.
So from a privacy perspective, I think that's a really fair question. And I think that patrons, and this is really a comment to the casinos, but deserve an answer to that for both player card information and what we do with the what the casinos do with the license information. And I think a privacy statement that could be made available from the casinos as to how that information is stored, protected, shared, whatever, I think it's a fair thing for a patron.
How's that different? They win a jackpot, they're gonna have to show ID. I mean,
But I think to me, it's a bigger question. Any information that's being collected from a consumer. I think that and maybe the casinos already have a privacy policy and I haven't seen it, but I think being able to provide that privacy policy. I know you do business in California, so you definitely have a privacy policy, right, that meets the standards out there. I just think that's a fair thing to be able to provide back to patrons. That's all. Food for thought. Now I'm okay with a motion to adjourn.
change is hard for people. I got ID'd walking in, so. Yep. Apparently they didn't know who I was, so it didn't matter, but, all right, we have a motion to adjourn. I don't know, did you second
I
it?
don't know, second it,
Okay,
right?
Ms. Green?
Hit the gavel.
Chief
Aye,
March?
aye.
Aye, you want me to hit the
Hit the
gavel?
gavel. There it is. All rise. We are done. Fantastic.